Okay, let's get started on today's class. I'm so sorry about the delay today. So I am going to be taking a look at this piece, which I looked at last time, but I didn't thoroughly have a look at it. And it's got some really big issues with anatomy. I'm gonna be using Portrait Studio to help me pose the model because there's a lot of stuff I can do with my own visual instinct, but I feel like I'd be more confident in posing the model with Portrait Studio. If you would like to submit stuff for Critique Hour, join us on Reddit. So go to istebrak.com and click on the Reddit icon. Portrait Studio is currently on sale on the store. I'll be using it today. And just a quick reminder that it's on sale at 50% off, as well as my brush bundle is also on sale. The environment challenge brief that I promised to upload on Tuesday has been delayed. I have not had any time to sit down and flex my creative muscles because pretty much every other muscle is being used for every other possible worry a human being can handle at a time. And that's it for the announcements. If you want to also support me on Patreon, you may do so. At just $1. That's all that's really asked and requested. But if you want educational material in exchange, you can join as an apprentice. You get homework, you get assignments, you get due dates, you get private critique hours, you get all my brushes, as well as any new brushes that are in draft. And you get private time-lapse how-tos on my personal work. I have not been doing a lot of personal work lately because it has been crazy 4 months. I did do personal work for November, but since December, I haven't done a lot of personal work, but I hope to be doing that this weekend. If I can find some mental space, just clear up just some space in my brain to just sit down for a stream and paint with you guys. I don't even think that's possible anymore, but I'll try my best. But at least classes are up again, and that's all that matters. No matter what happens in our day, no matter where we go, no matter where we come from, I think it's really, really important that remember why we're doing all this and why we have what we have today. And honestly, without art, I don't think I'd have what I have right now. I don't think I'd be where I'd be. Art liberated me, so that's why it's important for me to show up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So trust me, when I'm late for Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's because some shit's happening that is so beyond me and so much bigger than me. And I can't control it. That's usually why I don't make it to class. So just believe that, my whole life is about Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everything is about that, and when I'm not showing up to those, it's because of something outside of my power. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at this piece, and before I do, I wanted to pose it really quickly on Portrait Studio. In Portrait Studio, you get a posable mannequin that you can control. All its joints are movable, so I'm just going to be using that to help along the process. It's not a level perspective, so we're not seeing the bottom part of her face, and you'll see in a second as I'm posing in Portrait Studio how confusing this perspective is. We should be seeing some perspective markers here and there. The pose is also really awkward. It's really stiff. The arms, the elbows, the joints of the shoulders, it all seems a little forced. And you're working with not enough space. You want to expand the size of the canvas, work as much as you want, and crop the canvas along the new frame. That way you don't feel like you have to force her hip to go up so high. Even though it is like a caricature, it should still be, a little bit closer to proportions, at least in the proportions of the character. So you set up proportions when you choose a style, proportionate to the style. So there's a difference between anatomically proportionate and proportionate to the style. Write that back to me. And that just means that, we're not forcing real anatomy on anatomically inaccurate style and then ending up with something uncanny and freaky. So that's what's kind of happening here. It's not freaky. It's a little bit uncanny. It's bordering on uncanny, and that's the diagnosis. Like, that's the official medical diagnosis in this critique hour, is that this looks uncanny. And we want to proportion it to the style. So there isn't much you can do when it comes to shrinking down specific areas, though we wish and hope that that can happen in the future. Like grabbing one section and pinching it, like liquefy, like using a liquefy on it. But that's why when I'm done posing, I take it into Photoshop, my reference on Portrait Studio, and I adjust it on Liquify. So I'll be trying to do some of that on Liquify. But let's figure out what's happening here. Is the style demanding the head size be bigger? Let's just try to break it down together in discussion. So is it supposed to be a large head, kind of like a chibi sort of caricature, something cutesy, some toddler-esque kind of anime style? Why would you combine that with the most sexualized cartoon character in history? Let's pose this model. So we have the main rotation this way. Okay, and then we have the torso. So always start off with the torso when in doubt. Start with the torso. What is it doing? You can tell more with the body and the spine than you can with a portrait if you have a character. Write that back. All of the gesture relies on the spine. So what's the spine doing? The spine it's sticking her chest out, and her shoulder and everything is tilted away from. So from the side view, we can see how it's really, really symbolic of her. And then the whole model, I'm going to rotate it forward. And then I'm gonna just rotate the legs back forward so we have more of a push in the butt. Right, and then I'm just gonna try to have that there. I'm going to lengthen the neck. Oh, that's the head. I'm gonna lengthen. That's the head. Okay. That's the head. Oh, stupid idiot. I'm gonna lengthen the neck a little bit because it's really symbolic of the female, you know, when we have this really, really long silhouette between, the silhouette is describing a really long difference between the line of the shoulders and the position of the head. Okay. And then she has a flirtatious shoulder, so let's get that arm where it belongs. Like I said in the last class, the arm is really tricky. Be careful with it. I'm going to tuck it in towards the body and shift the shoulder up. If there's no seam here, if there's a seam here and it's not seamless, that's fine. It's just the model doing its thing. You don't have a flesh-made model. You have you know, it's a mannequin. It's a figurine. The rest you can just do it in your painting. So I'm already tilting the body as if the shoulder and the spine are leading the gesture, meaning I'm going to tilt the torso down to help along with that flirtatious shoulder that she has. But I'm going to tilt the head back forward. And that's going to create a nice lean in the arm. And then this goes back down. And then using the move, which is W, I'm going to tuck that back in. This arm is holding some wine, so it's going to be a kind of like an open high orbit to the elbow. And you just have to, the best thing with posing on Portrait Studio is keep changing your perspective. Don't stay in one perspective. Because just like in modeling, you want to constantly move around your position. I'm just having a more flexible wrist. And I'm just going to keep going back to this shoulder here. And you've done something with the arm that, you know, doesn't really feel right, and that's, you tucked it behind her waist. But let's just try to work with, because some of the reasons why you guys pose the way you do is because you just don't know how to dance. You don't know how to pose well. So you guys aren't the best movie directors, you know what I mean? So you're not choosing the best anatomy, you're not executing the best anatomy, and you're not choosing the best character in the gesture. But let's just see what we can do. Oopsie. And I'm going to move this to be more forward as well, kind of like that. And I'm just thinking about keeping her body feeling fluid, so it's okay if some joints are stacking, I don't really care. And then we have the thighs. So the whole upper body can be shrunken, or we're not going to just enlarge the thighs, and we could have enlarged the legs, the thighs, and then shrunken the calves down, so we end up with big thighs. And then we're rotating those in. So taking your time posing should really, really help, you know, at least to reveal like how much you can do with like with the dance, with the gesture. So to see how I mean, like her arm would actually be behind her butt this way and tucked in like she's hiding a knife or something behind her. And that makes sense. That, okay, if we add a narrative, it makes sense. But wouldn't it look better to just have her hand forward on her thigh, just elegantly placed? Like that. Or just as you would when you pose with a dress, just pose with your hand on your thigh, which feels a little bit more like a normal pose. Something like that. And I would just get rid of that there. Or just straighten the arm and just move the whole and rotate the arm back, tuck it in. Just something super basic. Okay. So we have this, you know, disproportionate body. It's really tricky to try to figure out exactly how much we're keeping. So I'm going to try to twist this back and enlarge the body. So we're twisting in with this third torso joint, using the R, I'm using the red line to twist in and shrink the waist, but I'm using this to resize it back to be proportionate. See what I'm doing here? So obviously I don't want it this much, so I'm just going to resize that back and push that back down. But now we have like a really defined shrunken waist to the model. And I'm going to try to give it that big head, but I'll know that the head, see, it doesn't feel right. If it doesn't feel right in the model, it's not going to feel right in your drawing. But I'm going to try to give the model like some of your proportions. And then I'm going to move that thigh up. Right, and that should help with that kind of sexy position she's in. And then we're going to go back to the camera. We're going to start thinking about where the camera is. I'm going to try to push the whole body down on the waist so we have an even more defined curve to the body. Her ass is almost as big as mine now. And now we're thinking about posing her for the camera. So this thigh could be lifted up and into this joint just to help along the curve. I mean, fat stacks, and this thigh could be pushed back in. I'm not really worried about the lower half of the model. I don't need to pose it because it's not visible on the camera, and it shouldn't affect anything too much. And also to help with the curves, I'm going to push the joint out on both legs. As for making it feel like the thighs are stacking, what you do is you choose the upper joint, the highest joint above the main structural joint. You choose this one and you tilt the body into the thigh. And then you choose the main structural joint again and tilt that back down. And then you just re-straighten the legs. And that way, you know that the body's always stacking towards that thigh. And so we get that lifted thigh of a walk, as you can see. And then click on the model, hide joints, and we have a bit more of a believable kind of stacking, so we know what to do with the shoulder. I would tilt the head and tilt the chin inward, and I'm just going to try to choose a light source that's more flattering but not scary. And I don't want to scare the audience. So you chose a light source that's coming from the top down at an angle. And I want to make a more dynamic pose. I want the light to look realistic. I want her, and she is dangerous. I mean, Jessica Rabbit isn't a fairy princess. You know, she does seem like a dangerous character. I'm trying to find the joint again for that thigh. I'm just pushing it forward. It's going to look really weird, but I'm just going to push it forward. And sometimes the model looks weird because of how many adjustments you had to make to adjust style, to meet the style. And so that's okay if it looks funny in one angle. It's going to help. Damn, look at that booty. It's going to help with the style that you chose. And that's the thing about style. It's a rule breaker. So if you try to accommodate style on a proportionate model, it's going to make the model look weird, because style is weird. And again, I'm just trying to make that shoulder be a little bit more flirtatious. It's mostly about where the shoulder is, and I don't care if it hovers in front. Again, I'm just adjusting it for the camera. And that means that if it's not going to look good in every single angle, the majority of our changes are there, and we have a great reference for the torso and the breasts. We're not really worried that much about things being super perfect in the model. And then I'm just going to go to the background color and just darken it so that we're seeing the real silhouette of the character. Another thing that I'm going to try to do is try to do a point light. I think that might be a better idea, because if I turn off the directional light and just get that, it might give us more of a cool light source. Is that? I wonder which joint it is. The indicator. Okay. I don't use many directional lights all that often. And then I'm just going to turn off the indicator. So you have that option as well, just to help. I think a cool long cast shadow might be a good idea. But if you don't want that, you want a cast shadow that's a bit more accommodating to the cleavage, that's acceptable. And then we have the field of view and the perspective. So what I would want to do is try to invest some level of perspective in to the reference. So something like where the camera position, she's just slightly above us on the stage. Like that. Do you see that? So I really like this position for the camera. Kind of makes her feel a little bit more domineering. And then maybe a tilt in the head this way. You kind of over tilted her head so she's looking, I'm just trying to find the invisible joint over here. So that she's looking at the camera and her nose is level with the camera. But the thing is about Jessica Rabbit is that she's always tilting her head down, so it's hard to pull off a lower angle. But I think this would look amazing on her with her hair kind of in the way. But just because I want to follow what the artist has done, I'm just going to do what they've done here. Okay, it's hard about my random, like, involuntary burps. I don't even know where those are coming from. So, let's bring this all back. Okay. As you can see, the joint that you drew on the shoulder, right over here, makes it seem like the shoulder line is level. So when someone is standing, let's just do some diagram work here. When someone is standing up, when someone is standing up normally, there's a line for the shoulder. When someone is raising their shoulder up, there's like a little, when someone is hunched or afraid, there's a little curve. It's like an S shape. You gave us a straight line of someone standing level. Even then we have S shapes. But she is not standing level with us because, you know, even when someone's standing straight, you can still see some definition on the shoulder. But let's just say we're staying stylized in cartoon. We're staying connected to that. We have this straight line here that makes absolutely no sense. Okay. And then we have the issue with the hair not following any of the light. So there should be a shadow tracking somewhere this way. Right, so this would all be shadow. And then we have this massive Olympic kind of heavyweight lifter torso thickness. Which if they've done that in the cartoon, it was just misguided style. It looks wrong. You know, female upper bodies should end somewhere there if they are within like that weight range. And we're just basing this off like Marilyn Monroe and pre-existing proportions. Celebrated female curviness, but still proportionate. And so this should be the basic changes that we see in this. And then we have the neck, which is a bit too visible considering what she's doing. And then the other shoulder, which is not making much sense to the position of the arm. So we have a shoulder that's right here and an arm that does that. So look at how many mistakes are here. And none of these mistakes are changing your identity as the artist. So if I get any of those dumbass comments, I like the before, or that's okay to like the before, but like if the before had so many disproportionations, you're either saying that to be a contrarian or you're not skilled enough to see the new changes and how beneficial they are to the greater picture. Or you just really like the before for some reason because I changed something or was misguided in one of my changes. Which happens. It's rare, but it happens. Okay, so let's make these changes now. I'm just going to start off with liquefy and shrink that head size because it's just unusually big. She looks like, you know, toddler, which is wrong after we like combine it with all that sexualization. So we're going to just shrink the size, raise the density, shrink the size of the head. That's going to make her curves feel a lot bigger. And I'm going to stack it thinking about where the hip is. See, that's the hip, which means that this leg has compensated to make that curve happen. And that's what makes females beautiful, is the swaying of one side to the other while you walk. And that's really what's sexy. It's that your weight is reallocating to one thigh as you walk. That's part of the curvature, and that's part of that, you know, that sexiness, and that's what they channeled when they were drawing her. You also don't have torso space for the upper chest before the other shoulder starts. We needed to get that there. So it's never been about the boobs why a woman is curvy. It's been about the hips. And the boobs are just two, you know, extra little additional curve mounds. Alright, and then you have this weird bump, this awkward bump. You don't know what to do with the arm on top of the torso. You can just let it stack right on top of it. There's really no awkwardness there. You just have to let it stack there. And so I'm giving the shoulder joint some bone. I'm giving the neck some breathing room. I think you did an amazing job with the face. Definitely 14-day challenge, or, you know, whatever efforts you put into the portrait, you've accomplished them. That you've capitalized on them. But now you need to start applying that same kind of effort and attention to figures. She has a lot of forehead and not a lot of head. Just give her some more. And then I'm just going to start taking a look at my model that we've prepared, which I have to exit for. So before, really big head. This is just with these liquefy changes, just so that the joints make sense and everything locks back into proportionate body. And this is before I do any changes here. So usually I just jump right into the critique, but this time I really wanted to explain, before anybody starts fucking foaming at the mouth about style, I really wanted to explain why style is a break of the proportions, but can still be proportionate in its own rules. But that does not mean you get to do whatever the hell you want. We're still basing things off the original blueprint of human proportions. So because I can't completely change a student's perspective that they applied, I have to work with a mix between this reference and this. You really wanted to do a lot with that shoulder, and it ended up being too big. And again, this is not something I would have changed on my own if I hadn't looked at my model here. So really what happens when a shoulder moves is that the collarbone tracks with it. So you just have to find where the collarbone is along the symmetry line of the torso, which is a different symmetry line than the face, because the neck moves around so much, the symmetry line moves around with the head. And so all you got to do is just create a separation between the neck shadow and the collarbone, which is catching light. So you can see there. And once you find that collarbone, it should be really easy to track that shoulder. At the end of the day, if it's hard for you to break down a reference, take a picture of yourself doing it. If you don't have a modeling program, or if you don't have any way to access some kind of trustworthy way of getting the reference quickly, the best, most trustworthy way of getting a reference quickly is just take a picture of yourself doing the pose. I'm just, in this lighting setup that we have here, the light is coming from above and the shadows are behind the breast. So I'm going to try to do that. Meaning that in a new layer, I painted the highlighter color for the breast, and I'm just going to, basically I'm blocking right now. Just like that. So we're getting an appropriate representation of that breast in the light. For the arm, in this lighting setup as well, we have the arm shadow on the far right of the arm. So there's no shame or no issues with letting some light sit on the outside closer to the edge of the canvas. It's not going to destroy your painting, and don't be afraid of it. It's just what is required right now to develop volume. Right, and then just like in radial shading, the cylinder is a major volume identifier. We really have to work hard on our cylinder. It's what's going to make the piece feel alive. So I'm just going to grab any white color and just throw the rest of that cylindrical light on the glove. Not too much though, and not as much as the skin tone. But that glove light is coming from one light source, but you've decided to over-represent it from the, as if the light is coming from the camera. My blood pressure is like really high right now. Okay, and then I'm still feeling this really awkward, overly kind of represented strength to the torso, as if she's like a rock climber or a bodybuilder. And I just feel like thinning that out will help us with a more modernized pin-up anatomy. Meaning she's athletic, but she's not outside of her weight class. And then from a distance, I'm going to start bringing in some core shadows. The more shadow, the more drama. And this is like a film noir type scene, so I'm not sure why, you know, we would skip out on the shadows. That's all that film noir is. It's mostly about shadows and minimal light. It's like you're taking a picture of shadows. And so I'm just throwing that shadow in there. I'm going to get the layer that I currently have and go backward in history. And before I started adding the shadows in, I'm going to erase away what I do want to stay light, which is the upper part of the thighs that's catching some light. And then this arm, which is tucked behind her, should be tossed in some more shadow. And so we have the arm here almost casting a shadow on the thigh. And the thigh is getting like really basic light from a distance. And that secondary light source you can bring in at a later time. And then same thing with the head. We want to make it seem like it's slowly receding away from the light. It's still a cylinder before it was Jessica Rabbit. It's still a, you know, a sphere. It's still a cube before it was Jessica Rabbit. So you have to start respecting the core shadows. So I'm throwing core shadows wherever there are major grooves in the anatomy. So that space, that drop in value between the eyes where the forehead dips in above the nose, that's going to get some shadow. The cheeks, the chin are going to be the only points of relief. So as you can see, we have more volume only because we brought in more shadow. And then that bounce light that you brought in. And by the way, you really need to do some studies for fabric, because right now it just looks like mold or mounds of things. It doesn't really read as fabric. It just looks like dough. And then one more thing that I want to change. So before, after, is the framing. It's kind of badly framed because we have a lot of the character's interest on the, like, gravitating towards the top right corner. And that shouldn't be the case. She should be occupying the point of interest in a painting, which is somewhere in this area. You see how far displaced she was, and there was nothing going on here except for a little bit of bounce light. The framing in general is, but remember, I'm just salvaging pre-existing paintings. If I were to start from scratch, I would show her entire body. It would just be part of it. But if you want that kind of exaggerated close-up shot, which is pretty awkward still, but you know, this is an acceptable crop. And then she's looking down and away, and I feel like in order for us to kind of get the most out of this crop and this zoom up, she should be looking at the viewer a little bit. Because we're zoomed up to her, it's more of a personal encounter. So I've gotten, throwing some more stuff off into the shadows whenever I can. And I'm going to go to the old layer and erase away what is visible. Meaning that this breast's half right here is visible. And maybe some of the hair. And it's not like the hair is falling in front and on top of the breast. You kind of cut it off on an awkward tangent right there. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't just hide the other shoulder or just show the other shoulder. I recommend just showing it. If it's part of her silhouette, then we're just going to need to see it. Okay, but then we just have this really awkward spacing here, but I'll try to blend that away. Filter and liquify. So if you always proportionately locate the torso and appropriately position everything on that torso, everything else clicks right into place. But remember that the arms are not more important, and if you lose your arms, you don't necessarily die, right? So what's more structurally important for, I mean, if you suddenly got them cut off and you bled to death, yeah, but I don't know why I talk about this shit in class. Even in private tutoring, I'll just go on and on about how you'll die if you don't have an eyebrow bone. Stupid. Even then, you don't really die. What was I saying? So yeah, you want to gather as much as you can for the main structural trunk, information on that, and then position that into the perspective that you need. And just for a funny quick little before and after, the breasts needed to be adjusted too, because the arm is dragging the breast upward. Alright, so altogether, in my opinion, I think that the entire piece should be way more dark. And that's... Okay, so did I duplicate the layer? Yeah, I didn't need to do that. So we get a new layer, put it on darken, and that's just the universal value you're using here as a shadow, which is that purple. Okay, so I'm darkening it to where I think it should be. And now I'm going to erase away radial erasing. So what is radial shading again? Can anyone describe it for me? The champagne glass is so out of its light environment, it's not even visible. That's so funny. The champagne glass has no light environment, that it does not exist anymore. It's not replying or responding to any light at all nearby. So what is radial shading? Can anyone describe it? So we've got eraser number 1, number 2, number 3, and I'm erasing towards the light source with soft brush to help that glow along. See that? So I'm letting some stuff stay visible. That top half of the canvas gets to be visible. All right. And then radially erasing anything under that light. It's just going to give us more volume. Because for every radial brushstroke, we are left with a new dimension, new thickness. Okay, so see how she just suddenly pops out? And how the breasts seem closer to us because we gave them more volume. And then before, and then after. You still have these issues with the, like, there's a lot I would change. And these are the changes that I'm going to make now. And these are the more my taste changes. So prepare yourselves. So the head goes way down, the head size. And this is me trying to, up until this point, I was trying to accommodate the artist's decisions. You know, so I listen to what you guys bitch about on the comment section. But now this is the point where we start adjusting things based off my tastes, my experiences as an artist. So, all right, so I'm going to push that there. I'm not going to let that be too pronounced because she's got curves there whether or not we're exaggerating them too much. Okay, I'm going to tuck that arm in, make it a little skinnier. And I'm gonna tilt that head down. Meaning the hairline goes down. The hair stays up there, so the head size doesn't change. It's just the hairline. And I'm gonna try to bring in like a downward tilt to the head, which means everything moves down and we see the top of everything. We see less nostril. We see more forehead. We see less chin. So her head is tilted down. Don't want her to read as an anime character. We still need that defined circular shape there. And to really make it pop, I'm just gonna change where she's looking just so that it's a more defined direction and not a general direction. And that's just to do with where the camera is. And then I'm gonna let that hair really kind of envelop half the face. She seems more curious, really. So, before, she's kind of looking down at us. After, smaller head. And these are just my changes. Before. Kind of an incomplete perspective on the head. Here, we're just exaggerating a lot more. And I just want to push that perspective, so it's not just a change in her face, but a change in the perspective. I want her to actually feel like she's looking down. Like her head is tilted down. Okay, so before, after, and then just try to throw that shadow in there as well. And then you have finally the lighting. You brought in a blue kind of studio light or stage light, just like a pale blue. And I will just bring more of that in there on a new layer. And then just let that kind of hover, and it'll really feel like we're actually getting some artificial light. Nothing says artificial light like blue light. And that's just flooding the entire scene. And as for the light on her dress, I mean, you can bring you can bring in another blue light. So, color, blue. You can bring in any other light, but you just stick to this purple. You could have brought like some light like this in to help with. Let me see if I can choose a better layer mode. Color dodge. You know, something like that to help with that negative space. Okay, so lots of staging changes. So before, awkward haunch in her shoulders as if her torso itself was deformed. The head size is way too big. The perspective feels a little bit off. And then after, a little bit more drama. And there's so much you can do with the ambient space. I mean, you can bring in a blue light to occupy that whole space back here and raise the, as if it's like coming from the bottom, and raise the background color so that we have something of a silhouette behind her. So any questions at all? And radial shading is gradually and radial applying shadows to the crevices. Yeah. Okay, so we're lightening up the space behind and underneath her to open up the scene, open up the space. So it doesn't feel like just a flat backdrop behind her, but an open stage. And there's an audience, and she's making money to pay for Mr. Rabbit's medical bills. And it just feels like you're trying not to show the arm. I would just completely erase this arm. And let me see what I can do. And kind of just go this way. And instead of awkwardly having it hang there, I would just let it just tuck in behind her a little bit, like as if she really is hiding something. Like that. Maybe, I don't know, show a dagger or something. I don't know what she's up to. I don't know her. She's not my friend. I don't hang out with her. And the arm needs to be less of a sausage. Moving down. So it's more of a deliberate placement of it behind her arm, behind her butt. than an awkward one or accidental one, or an artist just trying not to draw the hands. So we spent a little more time on these changes. But I hope, it's gone for, to teach you guys a thing or two about staging. She's scratching her butt. Yes, she is. I mean, she wears that dress. I mean, it's kind of get scratchy, you know what I'm saying? The glass. Really, really easy to do the glass. You just have to know where the light source is and outline it. Alright, so we're choosing a light source color. Let's just choose that. New layer. So glass is just a reflection of the light environment. That's it, because it doesn't have a color of its own and it's reflective. It's just going to reflect the light environment. And that's it. Any picture of glass you've ever seen, you're not looking at glass. You're actually just looking at the light source hitting see-through stuff. That's it. You just have to make it glow a little bit. I mean, if you want to make it glow, you can add those extra little reflections. If there is another like blue light nearby, that will capture on the glass. Okay, and then we've got actual full reflection. So you get a soft brush. And you can just choose whatever pattern you want, really. It doesn't matter. With, nobody's actually with a glass art calculator camera and pointed at your painting and find out whether or not you did the right kind of reflection. I'll just, just do random shit and it'll still look right. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you've got a reflection, like reference, do it. Sometimes I'll just do something like that. It's really not, crazy. And if she has a drink in there, that drink and its color will also be reflected by the light. It just won't hit the edges of the glass because there's a thickness to the glass. So let me just get... Oh, she probably has champagne, so it's probably like some white-ish color. And that just won't... That's just what the texture is of glass, is that it doesn't reach the edges. And of course, so it doesn't look like a urine sample, we have to make it match the light environment. So it's going to go down a little. So that the color of her dress comes through, which also happens to be the color of the light environment. I don't recommend a piece of glass, a champagne glass, because it's just going to distract away from what you're saying about her. And it's supposed to be a pinup of her. And yeah, you can have props for a pinup, but you're placing it right in front of the boob, which is, the most appealing part of her dress. If she's got like a blue potion, it would be cooler. Maybe I'll just make it more blue. I know, some blue drink or whatever the hell. Flatten the image. I'm just going to adjust the levels just as one big change. Nope, that's too much. I like the glow. I'm just slight adjustment of levels. I like that hazy Hollywood look, but also. And then just fixing that gesture line of the hair. It's okay if I ruin her nose because I'm just gonna Control-C and go backward. And then just delete away at where the nose was. Okay. Blur. It is a urine sample. She's hiding the drug test behind her back. Any questions at all? Okay, and let's take a look at the complete before and after. Before, awkward, really big head. Proportions seem constricted by your canvas size, so really enlarge your canvas size. Shoulder actually felt like that was her actual shoulder. She wasn't hunching over or trying to be flirtatious. Repositioned her in the after. We have a more traceable gesture line, which I think is helping her, the scene, helping the story. We have a lot more space around her and behind her. Okay. Thank you for this fantastic critique. You're very welcome, Layla. Good job on your, efforts, and it's good when you try, but make sure that you understand when we rush masterpieces, we are using them as an opportunity to reveal how many mistakes we have in our thinking, how we need to supplement our knowledge, where our weak areas are, what our weak spots are in our thinking and our habits and our knowledge, skill. I've already said all that. Sorry, I'm not very smart today. Do you mostly work on a drawing using a single layer in your own stuff, or is it just for these critiques when you have to use other people? I use as little layers as possible while drawing myself. Yeah. Happy you guys like the after. So one more time before. See, the thick torso comes from the original drawing of Jessica Rabbit, and it's just really awkward thickness in her torso. It looks weird. And the arm is really awkward, both arms, because you didn't know what to do with the torso. How are you supposed to know what to do with the arms? And you didn't have a reference. The head perspective is like a 14-day challenge front view, and then you just adjusted everything else to fit, which is not good. Apply some perspective. It's not that hard to, I mean, that was really mean. I'm just like, oh, it's not that hard to draw. That's not what I mean, but I'm saying it's not that hard to shift the whole face down away from a perfectly parallel horizontal line for the eyes and the nose and the symmetry line. It's not hard to just distort it. Even if you have to draw the straight line, go to liquefy and pull that all down so that you're in a new perspective like this. Even if you have to do that, do that. If you're too scared to try a new perspective in the head, it's not a lot. We're just tilting the head ever so slightly down. Okay, so these were the issues that I wanted to cover back in December before the break, and I was like, there's too many. I have to do a whole day just for Jessica Rabbit. All right, and you see that thigh that she throws out? Makes her look like she's actually standing off camera. Makes her look more strong and more in position, which is what she is. She controlled a room full of men, She has some strength to her, and she uses her sexuality to control them, but at the same time, she's a strong woman. She's not just a blow-up doll. And you see that light on the breast, how it makes sense in the perspective now because the breast is in front of the torso. Torso is looking away from the light. Breast has aspects to it looking up at the light. And I would even add one more little shadow, which I don't know why I didn't add now that I look at it, which is this little dude right here. I'm going to apply it radially, which is how the corset is climbing up and pushing the breasts up and away. But the breasts reach a point where there's no more breasts, and that's kind of that. So, that shadow. Also, the shoulder is casting a shadow on the breast as well. And then to correct that. And it's just a form study. Because the breasts are now pushed up, they're getting some more light from this side. Alright, so I just saved the breasts for last because they just, they're not the most important thing. It's mostly her attitude and her gesture that was the most important thing. Before, after. And remember, there were stages of the critique. There were my corrections, and then there were the basic corrections to help promote the artist's personality in the piece. But honestly, I don't mean to be rude when I say this. You guys have no business having a personality. You need to learn your anatomy first. And when you're making mistakes and you're saying, no, that's just my style. No, it's not. You just don't know how to do the thing you're supposed to do. And you're saying that that's your style. Not that I'm not saying that Leila said that. But I've had artists before say, that's my style. You have no fucking idea what you're doing so that you can have a style. Everything you've done thus far is accidental. And that's not dependable. And if I was hiring you and I looked at your work and I was an experienced artist, I would know for a fact this is not style because I've been there. And I remember making these mistakes, and I remember how aloof I was to the ways of the world. You are not someone I would hire as a dependable skill set in my studio. So that's technically why I don't entertain or give a damn about a student's style because they don't have one. It's just a succession of bad habits and repetitive decisions or a specific color they feel safe with. They don't have enough of an experience to pull off a calculated style. But that's enough bitchery for one day. Thank you everyone for watching today. If you guys want to submit work to Critique Hour, please go to istebrak.com and click on the Reddit icon to join us on Reddit. If you learned something today, and I will be uploading the environment brief as soon as I can. I'm just having a really, really rough week, rough month, rough life. But yeah, if you liked what you saw today and you want to send some support my way, you can do so by joining. It's just $1 patron. It doesn't have to be a lot for you to support or give back. If everybody on Reddit joined as $1 patron, I really would never need to promote Patreon ever again. And my goal is 1,000 patrons. If you guys can help me achieve that goal, if you want to deal with the checkout on Patreon, I would love if everybody who joined today, who appreciated today's class, to join as $1 patron. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much to those who have already endured the weird checkout on Patreon and joined as $1, and I really appreciate it. I know some of you don't necessarily want to support Patreon itself, but that's where you can find me to help give back to the community. I'll try my best to reach my goal as soon as possible. I'm just throwing my net out and seeing what comes back. I don't want to always have to promote Patreon in my videos. But I've been, meaning to get on top of that so that the channel has more stability outside of YouTube. My videos are not monetizable. They're too long. And I don't want to break my videos down into smaller things because that's not education. There's no such thing as fast food education. It's either you're getting educated with the time allotted in order to describe that much knowledge, or you're not getting an education, period. And that's what I want to give you guys, an education. So that's why I'm spending time giving back, as much as I can for those who do join as a watcher. You don't have to be a watcher in order to be a part of Patreon. And there's a reason why I call the $1 tier watchers. It's so important for the community that you guys join for that. It's a small amount. It's an acceptable amount, like $12 a year. But it still means the world if everybody joined in, if the volume moved in that direction. You don't have to join as an apprentice and do homework and all that in order to make a big difference for the stability of the community. But again, thank you to everyone who's already joined as $1 patron. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. I sent out a call and you guys answered it. That means the world. I will see you guys on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday the 21st. I will be moving soon, hopefully if all goes well and the inspector doesn't find skeleton bodies in the basement and asbestos in the kitchen countertops, then I'll be moving in very soon. I'm trying to think positive. It's really hard. I'm in a lot of pain all the time. But hopefully that the move does happen, which means that I will be moving toward the end of the month, last week. So next week might be the last 2 critique hours I do. because there's a lot of construction to do. I'm going to try to renovate my office first so that I could get back into classes as soon as possible. Private sessions and public sessions will be suspended until I completely finish at least one room in the in my new house. I ask for your prayers. That's all I ask for those who believe in praying for people, for those who believe in God. You don't even have to believe in God to pray. I ask for your prayers. It's getting so difficult every single day to do what I need to do to make it to class. And today I was 30 minutes late because I, to be honest with you, was on my couch in pain. And I was just wondering how I'm going to walk this short distance to my office, sit down, keep my eyes open, despite them wanting to just close and stay closed forever. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but I don't know how, by God's will and my own, I made it to my office and sat down and did today's class with you guys. But I also ask for your prayer. I ask for your send some positive energy this way. It feels like I've been running on fumes, and something's got to give out there in the universe. Can't just be all difficult all the time. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you guys for coming. I'll see you guys on the 21st at 5 p.m. Eastern time, hopefully. Bye, everyone.